In this lesson, we're going to cover the configuration of our DHCP server and really enabling it to give out IP addresses. So when you have your DHCP server, it actually has a database. So you can see where this database is stored by looking at the properties of the DHCP server. Notice it also has a path where a backup is taken. For each server, you'll actually see two nodes, IPv4 for giving out IPv4 addresses and IPv6 for giving out IPv6 addresses. Within here, I can actually create a number of configurations. So one is server options. So server options are something that are going to be consistent for all the different scopes of IP addresses I define on this server. For example, a scope is a collection of IP addresses that it's going to be able to give out to clients. So on a single server, I may define multiple different scopes, different sets of IP addresses. However, my DNS servers, my domain name may be the same across all those different scopes of IP addresses, so I can set those options at the server level. I then actually create scopes. So in this example here, I have a scope, and this scope has an address pool. So these are the IP addresses it can give out to clients. So it starts from the 50 to the 159 of the network 192.168.1. I've also created some exclusions. So out of that big scope of addresses, it cannot give out addresses from .90 to .119. They're being used for other purposes. I can see which IP addresses have actually been given out. So I can look at my lease and actually see these are the machines that are currently using IP addresses in my network. This is when the lease expires, and I can sort by this column. This is what I was talking about when, even if you have a machine that gets an IP address and then disappears, it's retired, it's rebuilt, it doesn't matter. The IP address will be given back once that lease has expired. I can reserve IP addresses. So let's say I did wish to use DHCP for my servers, but I don't want it to get a random address. I can actually go and create a reservation, give it a name, so the name of the server, say which IP address it should get, and then the MAC address. Remembering the MAC address of a machine never changes. It's set at fabrication time. So using this method, when that server requested an IP address over the network, it would actually always get the same IP address. So I'm not statically defining the IP address on the server, but to all intents and purposes, I really am. I'm doing it at the DHCP server. So I'm actually setting you will always get this same IP address. Then I have scope options. So these are things that maybe differ by the scope. As you can see here, it already has the options I defined at the server level. You can see it's denoted with the server icon. But also some things will differ by the different scope. For example, the router. The router would differ based on which network is it connected to. There are many, many options available. So you can see here I just set the router. But I can set things like time servers, name servers, DNS. It's a very, very long list of what I can add. So when this client comes across and requests an IP address, they get all of these pieces of information in addition to the IP address. And there's advanced options I can set. I can say show me all the DHCP standard, the Microsoft specific ones, any that are Windows 2000, and there aren't any 98. So obviously this is very much an historical set of items. You're really going to focus on just the standard DHCP options available. You need to make sure you always do set router. You need to make sure you do set DNS servers and the domain name for the environment. Now, as part of this scope, if I actually go and look at the properties, you'll see I set those IP address ranges. I set the subnet mask, and this is where I set the lease duration for those DHCP. So I set mine to 24 days, which is a very long time. In most environments, this would be, for example, 8 days. Or if you're a highly changeable environment, this was maybe a guest network, and machines are really only present for a day, maybe I'd set this to 2 days. Remembering that DHCP clients will renew at 50% of their lease interval. Maybe I set it for 1 day, maybe I set it for 8 hours. It's really up to you, and I can just click apply. I can set DNS options, and I'm going to talk more about DNS in a future module, but one of the great capabilities of DNS now is it has something called dynamic DNS, the ability for hosts to register their host name to IP address into the DNS server, so they're easily located. So this is basically enabling our DHCP server to say, let the DHCP server register records on behalf of the client, if they're requested to by the client. Maybe the client isn't capable itself. I can integrate with network access protection, so I only give out IP addresses if a machine meets a certain level of health. I can configure failover, which I'm going to talk about more. And there's various types of advanced settings on who I actually respond to. Is it DHCP, just requesting an IP address? Is it a boot P request? Boot P is where they're requesting an operating system over the network. Do I want to respond to both? I can also configure a delay. So let's say, for example, I had many DHCP servers. Maybe one was a backup server. I may configure that backup server to have a delay in how quickly it offers IP addresses, which would force clients to get an IP address from the primary DHCP servers as they responded that much faster. It's actually very, very easy to create these scopes. You can just right-click and say New Scope. And a wizard will guide you through all the different options related to the IP addresses, such as say a test scope. I can set the IP addresses I wish to use. I can change the subnet mask. Again, it's using the class of the IP address to automatically ascertain what the subnet mask should be, but I can change that. I can add exclusions through the wizard, i.e. IP addresses not to give out within that scope I just defined, how long the lease should last. And it also gives me the option to configure popular options. So I can say, yes, help me configure, for example, my gateway. Help me to configure my DNS settings. Help me to configure my WINS options. So it's going to guide me through all of those things. It's going to guide me through, should I activate the scope? I.e., is it now available to be used? So if I say no, what you'll see is the scope will get created, however it's down. It has that red arrow, which means it cannot be used. I can right-click, and then I can say activate to actually use it. But I'm actually going to say delete, because I don't need that scope. I can create policies, which is a new capability which allows DHCP clients to be really grouped together by attributes of their DHCP client request to allow greater targeting and control of the parameters that actually get delivered to them. I can do filtering to say only allow responses to certain MAC addresses or deny certain MAC addresses. And I actually have these disabled, so at this point I'm just really talking to anybody. So that was IPv4, and IPv6 is really exactly the same. I can go and create IPv6 scopes, and I have lots of the same options available to me. So this concludes the lesson on the basic creation and management of a DHCP scope.